most big changes don't fail because the plan was bad. It normally fails because the leadership underestimates the human side of it.
You've already accepted it and you're excited about this change.
Yeah.
And you inform everyone. You're like, this is so exciting.
Yeah.
Great. And they're like, wait, hold on a second. What?
The first thing I always do is train the leadership or the executive team on that very basic change curve concept, so they can predict how people will react. Making promises that everything's going to be fine is probably a stupid promise to make. You can guide people through it, you can't drag them.
Welcome to the 7 People Podcast, your guide to creating irresistible organizations.
And this week we will talk about how to survive and how to thrive during big changes. Because most big changes, from a new CEO to maybe major restructures, don't fail because the plan was bad. It normally fails because the leadership underestimates the human side of it. So this week we will show you not how to just survive big changes, but how to thrive through them. For this, we invited Toni Cairns, founder of YellowBox and fractional chief people officer, who built deep knowledge and expertise on this topic because she did 14 M&As in 20 different countries. Very impressive. So maybe the first question, what are actually big changes a company can go through? And welcome.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for having me here. It's great to talk about one of the topics that's closest to my heart. There are a huge number of types of changes that organizations can go through. You've already mentioned M&A. That's obviously a really big one, and it's one that you know that's coming. You've got reorganizations. Sadly, you can also have layoff situations, but you can also have change of leaders. You can have transformations of business strategy. You can have new market entries. You can have joint ventures. You can go for an IPO. Like, there are so many different types of change that an organization can feel, and some of them are very big and they're well planned for, and some are very small and they're not planned for at all, and then they turn into bigger problems later, I find.
So Toni, you're the person that I call when I have a real HR challenge. So how did you develop all this knowledge? I mean, Flo's already mentioned about the 14 M&As, and then, I'm curious, how did you develop all these knowledge about leading change?
Yeah, I mean, experience, I would say, for sure.
Yeah.
So I always joke that I seem to jinx companies because I arrive and then M&As follow.
An M&A magnet.
Yeah, it seems so. But all the other types of change that I mentioned as well, the founder to CEO transitions, the new market entries, the joint ventures, the IPOs. I've just been in HR now for over 20 years, and I've kind of lived through all of those different types of changes. So I think it's mainly experience, but that then also led into, for me, a bit of a geek, and I'm a psychology background. So I also get into the kind of the frameworks and the psychology that goes behind change and transition as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
We just talked that an organization can go through a lot of different types of changes. Is there like one common thing or one common mistake you see organization make while going through these changes?
I think there's more than one, for
Okay.
sure.
A few then?
I have a few kind of general do's and don'ts when it comes to change. I would say whatever type of change it is. I think one is, do make a change plan. Mm-hmm. You mentioned in the intro, the plans aren't bad, but you'd be surprised how often there isn't a good enough plan. So I'd always say, do make sure whatever you're going to plan for change, plan it in a way that also goes at least 2 months beyond the date of the change itself. Normally people think, oh, great, now the reorg's done and off we go. But actually there needs to be a lot of follow-up.
Aftercare.
Exactly, of whatever you're planning. I would say do treat people like adults. I also find it ridiculous how often people will try and keep things hidden into themselves, and really it becomes very patronizing. People are not stupid.
No.
So I think treat people as adults is always a big one. I would say a big mistake I often see is particularly leaders expecting everyone to see the change the way they see it and expecting everyone to feel the same way that they feel. So I would say don't expect everyone to feel that way. And, if you're familiar with things like Kubler-Ross, I would always say just make sure that people understand that everyone goes through a change curve in their own time.
What's Kubler-Ross?
Kubler-Ross is it's actually quite an old basic theoretical model for going through originally the grief stages. But actually it's a really good way of just changes of any human emotion. when you're confronted with an unexpected change.
Yeah.
So it's a really good one for just explaining to middle managers that this is how people feel, and it will not necessarily be on the same timeline that you're on. So you might be in anger while they're in denial, or you might be in acceptance while they're still in frustration.
Yeah, and I think like that's super interesting because what I know, you mentioned about the planning stage, right, which is really, really important. But because of the people involved in the planning have started their journey earlier than when you tell everyone. So you've already accepted it and you're excited about this change. And then you inform everyone. You're like, this is so exciting. Yeah. Great. And they're like, wait, hold on a second, what?
Yeah, I'm still I'm still processing what's happening here. Yeah. Exactly that. Nice. Yeah, really, really good point.
And that's also the reason why often you feel a lot of resistance, right? That people are like, oh no, and I'm scared of it. And then leadership is like, the people don't want to change. And then you get this friction.
Yeah,
that is not good. That's not what we want.
And whenever actually I just did a massive transformation with one of my clients, and the first thing I always do is train the leadership or the executive team on that very basic change curve concept. So they can predict how people will react in a very high level way, but they can also appreciate that they are further along that change curve themselves than their people will be. So they already, I found when we first started executing the changes, I had the CEO and the CTO going, they're in denial, aren't they? Yes, they probably
very
are.
good.
Well done.
Like it's slightly a different model, but it's making me think about the Tuckman model, right? So like norming, performing, storming, in not that order. But actually, and I think this is what you're saying. This has really worked for me because when we form a new team or we change a team, because I've already told the leader, hey, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And so when things start to get difficult and challenging, we're having like difficult conversations and conflict. Because they were expecting it, they don't freak out about it.
Exactly.
They're like, oh no, we're going
part
through this
of the
phase.
process.
Yeah, exactly.
So couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So 3 things to remember: make a good plan, and I think a plan in general, communication plan, it can.
I would say use ADKAR for that. The basic awareness, desire, ability, knowledge, and reinforcement. Make that plan that goes beyond the point of change.
Make sure you do it 2 months, or at least plan it at least 2 months after the change is actually happening. Treat people like all adults. For me, I'm like, duh, but maybe not for everyone. And also make sure that your leadership team is aware that maybe employees are on a different stage of the what do you say?
The change curve.
The change curve.
The change curve. I love that.
And let's say, if we talk about the change curve, let's say you are a leader of an organization, you are already in acceptance and excitement, and I'm an employee and I feel still a lot of resistance and I'm still in the now. How should I then as a leader turn me into the next phase of the change curve?
Yeah, indeed. And again, you can guide people through it. You can't drag them through it. So
good to know.
Always, I think, an important one. But there are different things, especially, again, you mentioned communication. And at different stages of the change curve, people need different types of information. So if they are they're in the very early stages, they're stunned, they're a little bit in denial, they're in overwhelm, they don't need like a 20-page FAQ, for example. They are not ready for that. What they need is a compelling why at that stage. So as a leader, your job at that point isn't to go into all the detail. It's just to share why this needs to happen. Whereas if you imagine when people are at anger and frustration, and normally then they're in the real fight mode, then it's just give space to listen, let them vent. Give space to listen, let them vent, and then start selectively challenging those arguments, but don't end up in like a big fight with them at that point. They just need an emotional process, normally of grieving, of leaving something behind, of letting go of something. Whereas when they're in excitement mode, give them all the room to run. Don't put like loads of rules, like it has to be done this way and it has to be done that way. Harness the excitement, get them to go and experiment and iterate and try stuff out and play with ideas, and that will help other people also get excited as well when they see their colleagues do.
Works contagious, I think.
Exactly. And that also makes sense like at the start, because if you're announcing a huge change, like I don't know, there's going to be a new CEO, or we just bought another company, we're merging, or something like that, and then you go straight into all the detail. Then you're like, wait, hold it, like you're just thinking about that. What the hell does that mean? Like, am I still going to have a job, or Is my team going to change? And you're having all these thoughts really fast in your mind, and then it's like, here's the action plan and the 10 steps we need to go through. And you're right, you're not ready to absorb that.
No, exactly. And actually, you've also just, I think, highlighted another really key point, which is the what's in it for me. So when we talk about why this change has to happen, I'll always sit with an exec team and craft a change narrative. Like, why are we doing whatever it is we're doing? Why is this so important to do? And it cannot be only from the company's perspective. It cannot be, this is just a massive opportunity to make lots of money for, whichever investor or shareholder we're talking about. We have to, that might be true, but we have to also translate it into why this is a good idea for people. Even if you're looking at layoffs, it might not be good for every single person, but there is a story to tell about why the macro change is also relevant at the individual level. So I think that's really a key point as well, because people will only focus on the personal interpretations or the personal impacts at that moment.
Yeah, nice. You had some cases, right?
Yeah, because we talked about I think 6 or 7 examples of big changes organizations can go through. Unfortunately, the podcast is normally only 20 to 40 minutes. So I thought maybe we can just pick a few that are very common in especially start scale up world, I would say, that we can maybe do a bit of a deep dive in. Just if you are an HR professional or a founder and you go through a situation like that, you're like, oh, chill, 7 people podcast, help me out. That is a bit idea. So maybe, Paul, you are a very senior HR leader. What is the biggest?
Very senior.
Yeah.
Wow. You've been promoted on this podcast.
Yeah. But I mean, what is one of the biggest, the most common change you see?
So one, the biggest change I see is on the investment side, actually.
Yeah.
But there's a different one I wanted to focus on first. And one we see a lot is, when we work with startups and scale-ups, usually it starts with there's 2 or 3 founders. They found the company, and then the company gets too big. Sometimes they stay in the leadership, which is great. Sometimes they say, hey, actually, you know what? I started this company in my garage, and now it's 100 people, 200 people, sometimes 500 or 1,000 people. I don't know how to manage this group of people. And they actually hire a CEO to run the company for them. They stay in the company. They might be one of the C-level CTO or CFO, CEO, whatever, but they bring in a new leader. So I was curious on your advice on leadership transitions.
Yeah, this is one I've seen a few times as well, and I've seen it done well, and I've seen it done not so well.
Curious.
And it's what it is, because just as you said, the founders tend to be the visionaries. They started in their garage with a passion for a topic, a purpose, and some sort of spark of genius, more often than not, right? The kind of classic founder profile. Generally speaking, and there are some famous exceptions. If you look at Mark Zuckerberg, I think he's one of the few that really managed to transition himself from founder profile to CEO. But normally they're very different skill sets and very different personality types. And so where you've got your CEO is really built around systems and operationalizing, perfecting, optimizing, basically making things scalable and repeatable. That doesn't really go very well with the founder profile. So when it's done really well, if the founder's going to stick around, which, as you say, quite often they want to, I think it's so important to bring clarity on roles and responsibilities, and particularly decision rights. So where I have seen it go really wrong is where a founder, for example, in one particular company, had very strong views on the aesthetics of the company brand. Like he had a style, he had a vision, and the new CEO that he appointed thought that he had full rights. And the founder was only going to stick around on product type of topics. But actually, when the CEO said, right, well, I want to move the office away from, they were somewhere in town on one of the grachts, so very fancy, wanted to move to a much more cost-effective location out in Househavens, so just cheaper and, bring everything down to a more cost-effective
So thinking business.
model. Very much thinking business, like a CEO should.
Yeah.
The deal was signed, the lease for multi-years, employees have been informed. The founder then just decided, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to move because I don't like it. It's ugly.
Oh.
And so caused absolute carnage and a lot of cash loss because he literally vetoed the move after things had been done. No, the CEO didn't even know the founder had still those rights. So you can really see this. You can imagine what people were then saying in that organization, because it was so clear what had happened, totally undermined the CEO, who then really struggled to reestablish his own credibility with his own team. So I think you've got to get it really clear, whereas actually there's another one that I know is literally in process of happening. And I think it's amazing because the CEO and the founder have sat down, I presume on somebody else's advice, and have really worked it out exactly where the founder will be involved, where they will not be involved, where the CEO has got full rights, consultation rights, or just input rights. And as boring as it sounds, if they do this, I think it can work beautifully.
Yeah.
If they don't, I think it's an embarrassment and a bit of a cash burn issue.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like about when you say it out loud, it sounds kind of simple, right? But like sitting down and saying, okay, who's responsible for what? Who has the authority for this decision?
Yeah.
Question though, because the first founder that you described, I personally believe you see those quite often, to be honest, especially the first-time founders.
Yeah.
That's kind of their baby, their first thing. It's very difficult for them to let go. Yeah, for us as HR professionals, it's kind of our job maybe sometimes to challenge those founders. So do you have any best practices on how to deal with these type of difficult founders?
I mean, when in doubt, I always go back to a why of whatever. So I would go back to, why did they want a CEO in the first place? Why did they want? Because it will be mostly the founder's choice.
Yeah.
Why do they want it? And normally because they don't want to do the boring stuff that a CEO has to do.
No.
They don't want to have to worry about the EBITDA. They don't particularly want to worry about the scalable processes. They want to only focus on something, then just make it clear what that something is and get out the way for the CEO to make this business, goes from 100 million to 1 billion. Because that's not what, I would look at a founder and say, that's not what you're going to do.
No.
That's not what you want to do.
And also, you would assume that is what the founder would want, right?
They want the billion, yes.
Yeah.
They just don't necessarily want to get out of the way all the time.
So it's more an ego question, I think, or not, right? Yeah.
It can be. But also, first-time founders are often super young.
Yeah.
They've also never actually seen a CEO.
No, true.
So it can be a shock to them. Like, oh, I thought it was, going to look like this.
Yeah.
And then now it looks like that. And I was unaware. So I think also doing some pre-work with them as well, like really shaping the CEO role, not just the profile of the person.
No, and also maybe keep in mind that they also have to go through the change curve.
Definitely.
Right?
Definitely that. Definitely. But also how powerful it can be to work together. If you can really keep the passion and the vision and the real heart of whatever made the business succeed to that level in the first place, and then you can add on, somebody who can really drive through and turn it into a real business. If you get those two things working together, everybody wins, including the people working for them.
Sounds so easy, right?
Yeah. And that was like one example of leadership change. But what are other examples of leadership change, or is it the same advice, like in general, when we're changing senior leaders in the company? Is it similar kind of advice?
Yeah, sort of, yeah. So, for example, what I've also seen a lot is, again, a business will get to such a scale where they'll need to introduce a C-suite, let's say, for the first time. Yeah. And suddenly you've got people being normally brought into the company with, more boring type of experience. They're not the ones that were there at 2 a.m, making whatever in somebody's garage. Yeah. And so that can also be a similar type of friction, if not managed well, because then you're kind of traipsing in a group of people normally with more corporate experience, they've done in the bigger companies. Yeah. And that can feel very jarring to the people who've been there since the start. So I think those kind of transitions are also quite common and also often not very managed very well. There's a client I worked with last year where they were really struggling with this, and it became kind of two tribes. Yeah. This experienced tribe that were brought in versus the OGs. And
I've seen this as well.
But
how can you
because
break
also
through
as well,
this?
like in this group with the OGs, they're the ones that were like, indeed, like you said, stay up to 2 a.m. The social element's very important to them. The Friday drinks, all these different things. And then let's say the new people who are from the more corporate background, all of a sudden they want to leave on time. they're not really as interested in the drinks.
No.
So then it creates this tension.
And also they kind of don't trust the corporate people that come in or something. I feel like, this is based on something that I saw, but how can you break through that?
Yeah,
How can you?
really difficult.
It's very difficult.
It's really
is there a
difficult.
way, or is it then just change leadership again? And,
No, definitely no. I mean, I think there's always a way, but for me, it always starts with empathy. And again, the why.
Yeah.
So why are these OGs so important? Because they know the history, they know the origin story. They have everything that these new corporate folks don't have. But these new corporate folks, they can really help with professionalizing a business. There is something to learn from each group. And I really believe mixing up and doing, whether it's a kind of partner mentoring, whether it's cross workshops, I really think when any new people are brought in, I think it's really important that there is a kind of showcase session from the OGs, like, please tell us the story.
Yeah.
We want to understand this story that is so important. But I think it's also really useful if the people who are being brought in with a different type of experience are also saying, hey, I respect so much what you guys have done, and here are some opportunities we see to take it to the next level. But it has to kind of come in with this understanding that neither group is better than the other.
No. And normally what you see that they just start.
Yeah.
They do one-on-ones with almost the whole organization, and then they just begin.
Yeah.
That is kind of... But that is not the best way, you would say.
Not in my view. And especially given the fact that people who are being brought in are normally being brought in at senior positions. So again, there's a power dynamic already in place, which goes against the group that have been there since the start. So they're already going to feel more threatened and on the back foot. It's all going to get a bit more boring, blah, 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 So I think again, make a change plan. Make that plan last 2 months longer than the date that the new profile starts. All of this is really important.
Yeah, it sounds like you have to be quite mindful about the changes you're making, right? It's not just
Always.
like, oh yeah, we need this expertise, let's hire someone. It's like, okay, what would be the impact of when we do that?
Yeah.
Let's think about some scenarios and make plans for those
Exactly.
scenarios.
Apply your ADKAR again. Make everybody aware in the organization. Why do we need to start bringing in some of the more senior levels? Make them desire it. What an opportunity for them to learn about how big corporates do it without having to go and work in one. Give them the right coaching tools, like make the whole plan through so that it becomes something, what's in it for me? I get to learn.
Exactly.
And a whole new skill set. So again, it's always the case. Make a proper plan.
Yeah. And then also when you look at the change curve, it's not like you smack it on the table and are like, here, this is our new CEO. And everybody's like, wait, what? Why? How? Shocked. And you kind of make them part of the decision.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
or
part
not
of the decision might be stretching
of the
it
person, but you make them part of the process.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
really
maybe
good way to
better.
say it.
Nice. And now, leadership transition. Also, what we see a lot, what you touched up on already, is investors that all of a sudden come around and dive into all of your numbers and details and stuff. How to deal with that? Because that also normally comes with kind of performance pressure, I would say. You all of a sudden have to get processes in place, maybe really cut in FTEs and what else.
Yeah.
I'm not,
I would say one thing we like a lot as 7 People is the competing values framework. It's kind of similar to what we were just talking about, but when the company's founded and is growing, we're this like family culture. And in this framework, it's called a clan culture. And then we get this investment round, not usually so much the Series A actually, but it's more like the Series B or Series C even.
Yeah.
And then, the investors have an investment horizon, whether it's 5, 10, 20 years I've seen even, and they want their money back, right? They're investing all these millions and they want it back times 5, times 10. And then that's when it's like, oh, wait, actually we need to deliver results. And it's less like, hey, let's show up to work and just randomly work and see what's happening. It's like, okay, no, people need to be productive. You need to be accountable for your results. All of a sudden you're getting feedback, which you hadn't had before. So I was curious on your experience of that kind of change, and we call it going from a clan culture or family culture to a more market focused culture.
Yeah, it's a nice description actually, really nice description. I mean, I think every scaling company aspires to get investment. Like that's the goal, right? And where I think it goes a bit wrong is that it's seen as the goal, as in it's like they see it as the end destination. Get the Series A, get the Series B, get the whatever. And the problem is that it's not an end goal. What it is basically a shift into a new plan, a new
stage,
and a new phase.
Yeah.
So the idea is you're moving into a different phase, which means different rules of the game. And it's a different race you're running then, because in the early stages, of course, what you're going for is product market fit, prove there's a need, prove this is going to work. And then you get the funding. And at that point, you then move into, okay, now we go from proving it works to proving that this can work long-term on a big enough scale. So that means we have to be different because we're going for something different now. It's not growth at any cost. Now we have to actually show this can be profitable growth. You know, so everything's changing when you get these different levels of investment. But again, if you don't explain that to people, and suddenly you just land a load of KPIs on them, and suddenly it feels like you're trying to manage the business through Google Sheets. It kills people. They don't understand it, and it feels tedious and boring and confusing. And why now am I having to fill out every line on a P&L when originally we only had one metric, revenue or volume? And it's the lack of explanation means people are not taken on the journey. So then I think they feel confused, frustrated, and left behind.
Again, the why.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Kind
With
of
any change, always bring it back to the why.
Always start with that. That is actually a really nice key takeaway that I'm going to...
Indeed. Well, it's borrowed from Simon Sinek, so I can't take any credit. But yes, start with why.
Yeah. Quite so logical again, but still you don't see it happening always in an organization. It's again definitely. Like we do strategy from now on and we have this whole difficult lead sheet and it costs so much time and sometimes you're like, why are we measuring this? And also what we talked about last week with Koen is that you get all these KPIs and targets and things, but normally also in a lot of startup scale-ups you don't really have the data to actually measure what you're doing. So it's also a bit like random.
Yeah, which also frustrates people if they can't believe in what they're being asked to do.
Exactly. It feels all a bit like, baked air. We say in Dutch, gebakken lucht. I'm not sure if that's an English expression, but I hope you get the point.
And then what about M&As? Because you said you have a lot of experience in M&A. So maybe just to explain, right? Because merger is when we merge two companies together and acquisitions when one company buys another. Are they very different or is it a similar?
They're very
process?
similar.
Yeah.
There are, when it comes to the culture and the design of the culture that you want to do, that's where I think it differs. But to be honest, in every other way, they're classed as one and the same, I would say, from a people perspective at least. Okay.
Because this is the one where I see, because sometimes you work, like the leaders are working on these mergers for a very long time, sometimes even years, right? Like
can be.
And so, and this is, we were talking about this example earlier, and that's the one where, okay, well, the CEO or the leadership team have been working on this merger with the other leadership team of the other company, and then there's some like really fancy lawyers involved.
Yeah, expensive fancy lawyers.
Expensive like magic circle lawyers. And then by the time it comes to announce a change, they've already, as we talked about earlier with the change curve, they've already accepted it. They're super excited about it, and then they expect everyone else to be excited about it, right? So yeah, what are your top tips? I want to talk a bit more about emotions after that, but what are your top tips for M&A?
Yeah, I mean, this one, indeed, it's definitely the area I've done the most in. And it's, I think, unlike the other types of changes we've already discussed, this one normally has the most negative, sensitive impacts on people.
Really?
Yeah, because if you think about it, whether it's a merger or an acquisition, but especially a merger, when you put two companies together, quite often you're going to be overlapping in roles, which means you don't normally end up keeping everybody in the organization. And that's what people immediately will fear. If you can imagine it's a takeover. So I was actually on the receiving end of being part of a hostile takeover. So the board of my own company didn't even want to sell. And it was the investors that did it, regardless. That is very difficult because the ingoing expectation is I'm going to get fired. So it's very difficult to do an M&A and immediately get people into a positive mindset. Yeah. So I think that is why it's one of the trickiest ones. If you imagine, again, two leadership teams coming together, chances are, you're only going to end up with one. Yeah. So I think on the top tips for M&A in general, there's a lot of self-talk going on with people. So if you do not communicate, that people will just make it up. They will fill in the blanks themselves with all their own stories, and those stories, chances are, will not be positive.
Yeah.
So it's when we went through the Getir Gorillas acquisition a couple of years ago now, I was sitting down with our team going, we are just going to do daily stand-ups with the whole team. And my GM at the time said, but what am I going to say? I have nothing to say. It's like, I don't care. We are going to, on a daily basis, and I think we did it for months. We just did, whether it was space for Q&As, whether it was every time we did have something to share, we would share it transparently. We would take the questions and we'd try and find out answers, even if we didn't have them ourselves. But this need to over-communicate, even when all the leadership themselves will feel very unsure or insecure themselves, it's absolutely imperative. So I think this is a really key
And it was
one.
a daily stand-up with the whole organization? So
Yeah.
like the CEOs leading a daily stand-up? Wow.
Yeah, indeed.
Wow.
Because it was just, and again, you almost want people to say,
Again.
again?
Yeah,
you
yeah.
want them bored
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
That's really the goal.
Yeah.
Because then there is no room
Then it's kind of like business
left.
as usual, right?
Yeah.
By that point.
And
yeah.
there's no room left
Yeah.
for anyone to make up any stories.
Yeah.
So it's an annoying level of over communication that I think is really important in the M&A, and building the change narrative as you go. As much as you know, people it depends on the size of the business, etc. But build up the change narrative and then start feeding it in. So again, people can be as confident as they can, and they can trust as much as they can that when there is something to know, you'll know it.
Yeah.
You know, and not that people are hiding and keeping secrets. But a lot of the M&As that I saw that went very wrong were often because leadership were trying to get everything figured out, everything planned, and then they would tell everybody, because then it would be clear.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
But in the gap
Okay.
from announcement to clarity, people had already checked out, switched off, you know, created all sorts of drama for themselves.
So but does that mean you're saying sometimes you have to say, okay, cool, like this is where we're trying to go towards, and then just daily update, like bite-sized updates?
Bite-sized updates. I will always try and get, at the point of announcement, some sort of high-level roadmap. Say, okay, we're going to tell everybody today that we've done an acquisition. It technically goes into effect normally the day after. We have an intention to create, whether it's an organization designed by this date, we have plans to introduce everybody by this date. Like, we have a very high-level view that in the next 2 months, everybody will know everything.
Yeah.
So we've already set the expectation. There's going to be 2 months where we need to manage through. And in those 2 months, we're going to focus on education is normally my go-to one. So just educate the businesses on what the other one does, who they are, what they stand for, why their product's great, whatever. Just something for you can fill in the blanks while you don't have any actual information. So whatever it is, try and build a plan for something.
Okay.
Got it.
What happens when an M&A goes wrong? People leave, or what?
Yeah, all sorts of things lots of things can go wrong. People leaving is one topic, but it's more the wrong people. So if you imagine there's critical knowledge mass, you need to understand like who really has our key customer information, who has our key product information, who is the influencers in the organization. Because again, if you lose your influencers, everyone else will just follow suit. You know, the popular kids make one choice, other kids tend to follow, and it's a little bit the same in organizations. But what's even worse is the people who stay have lost all trust, all enthusiasm, all confidence. So if you imagine you've lost all the people with the critical knowledge, and who's remaining are the ones that can't really be bothered to go, but they don't believe. They don't believe in any of it.
Disengaged, dismotivated, probably calling in sick soon.
Oh, yeah. I mean, awful. And it kills the business.
Because your high performers can get another job elsewhere, right? Quite easily. So
and they are normally with enough agency in their own life that they will.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the people, again, and it's all big generalizations I'm making here, of course. But that's the worst examples of where it really goes wrong.
That makes sense. And then we were talking before about like the emotional side and people getting upset, and you said it's really important to give space for those emotions. So how does that look? Is that just a case of manager or head of department getting people in the room and saying, hey, come at me. You know, how do you feel about it? Is it literally is let's get your emotions on the table and talk about them?
Sorry, I'm very visual, but now I see a manager coming in this suit and everybody with kickboxing gloves. Come at me, come at me.
Well, the reason I say that is because like there's these AMA sessions, right? The Ask Me Anything sessions.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then, like, I always find if you walk in a room and say, hey, ask me anything, people are a bit like,
Yeah.
So yeah, I was curious how you would frame those more emotional sessions.
Multiple ways. So for starters, it's not one session or one moment. So normally what I would do is start with the more senior leaders who hopefully by then I've had a chance to train a little bit on how to give the right space. I would always get them to do open sessions for 6 to 10 people max. And indeed to just say, okay, what are we thinking about what we've just heard? I'll go first. And then get them to do a little bit of role modeling. And okay, when I first heard this news, this is how I was feeling. You know,
And this is about and be transparent, right?
Absolutely.
Like,
name 3 or 4
vulnerable.
emotions. I was feeling insecure. I was feeling quite concerned, and I was feeling a bit confused. This is what helped me get over those. Okay, how are you guys feeling?
Yeah.
So that normally sets a little bit of a tone. And if everybody does those throughout the organization, then I would get to the managers in between, say, okay, it's not your job to know all the answers. You are going to have people asking you. They probably will think you know more than you do. That's okay. So give them already immediately the comfort that they don't have to take on the burden of anything else. But part of their role as a manager in any situation is to be there for their team. So they don't have to have the answers, but it's their job to gather up questions. So I'd give managers the little job of gathering questions. So again, whether they do that one-to-one or in normal team meetings, but they feel like they have a role to play. And also it gives other people a chance to be a little bit more forthcoming, normally with somebody that they trust, which is their direct manager. And then managers kind of normally bring all their questions, the exec team. Again, we get insight into what people are asking, which tells us how they're feeling. So if they want information, they're at a different point than if they just want to know if I'm going to get fired. Because that just says, okay, we've got a lot of fear in the organization at the moment. So different things. And then we always do clinics. I would always get HR team to do a clinic.
What's a clinic?
Like a clinic, like
HR clinic.
Yeah, like a little clinic. You know, basically, if you are feeling, you're just feeling overwhelmed or you're feeling upset or annoyed, you know, we are here in the PNC team. If you just want to come and
so that's like open door kind of thing. Or,
exactly.
What do you call them? Drop-in sessions like that.
Exactly, exactly. If there was anything that you missed in terms of you think there's something going, you know, there's information out there that you don't know, come and check in with us. You know, we will be super transparent on that. And if you want to just have a vent or a coffee or a cry, like that's also okay. You know, so just as many different touch points.
And
as
also as well, like I really like the PNC clinic idea, and then also with the like manager sessions. I imagine you prepare the managers and say, okay, cool. If you get a question that you don't know, then you say, actually, I don't know the answer to that question, but I will take it to the exec team and get the answer for you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, try.
Or try
Never
to.
make promises.
Never make promises.
But it's gathering questions that also can help shape us, I would say, then the weekly stand-up or the catch-up that's next planned. We just at least acknowledge all the questions. Again, might not have the answers, but here are the top 5 questions we know is on everybody's mind. Thanks so much for sharing them. You know, we can answer this and this. These 2, our guess is it's going to be another few weeks, guys. So we really try and just keep the feedback loop going where people understand they're being heard, even if we can't give clarity. But it gives them some confidence to, again, you just want people to trust that they will know when they can know.
The trust triangle. And once you have trust, you can build everything else.
Exactly. And with M&A, again, the chances are making promises that everything's going to be fine is probably a stupid promise to make. You know, normally there will be shifts and changes. So I think generally speaking, expectations management is really important in that moment.
I'm so amazed by the depth of your knowledge. It's amazing.
We
right?
can talk for hours because I wonder. We always do an intermezzo, and this week I have one in place for you. So, Toni, tell us, would you rather introduce one big all-at-once change or 20 small changes spread out over the year?
Oof, that is a challenging one. I think I would probably prefer one big change because I think it's easier to plan for.
Yeah.
But I think the reality of life is more commonly you have to manage the 20.
20 small one.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think being able to do both is really important.
Mhm.
But give me the choice, I'd rather just do the one big
Do
one.
one. Also for the people, it maybe feels better just one and not that they are
And
in
then
a
they know.
continuous loop of change.
Exactly. I don't know if you've heard slicing the salami is
Yeah,
an
yeah,
English
yeah, yeah.
expression. I don't know
No,
how
I'm
it would
not-
translate in Dutch, but it just means sometimes people can get change fatigue
Yeah.
of constantly being exposed to change. But the reality is, I think, certainly in the way businesses evolve these days, I think people need to build change resilience. So
Yeah.
I think they need to just get used to the fact that there'll be 20 every year and be okay with it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
find a way for them to make themselves at peace with it, rather than looking for the beginning, the middle, and the end
Of the change,
because
yeah.
it's realistically the end of one is just the start of another.
Probably.
Yeah.
Cool. And you?
So in the changes that we've been talking about, definitely one big change.
Yeah, me too.
So, I mean, I've not worked on like M&As, and huge transitions like Toni has, but I have worked on a lot of reorgs. And then what I noticed sometimes they're like, oh, let's do a small reorg and then see like if we can survive. And then there's another one and another one. And then you're like, you know what I always say is, just rip the Band-Aid off. And I think it's the same with these examples. It's like, you know what, let's just make the change. There was an old reality and now there's a new reality. And we're going to help you get through it. So yeah, that's what I would do, one big change.
Cool.
For sure. But one thing I was just thinking about when you were talking is there is like different types of change, right? Because in terms of we want to innovate and we might need to pivot the business, and those changes happen all the time, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
And that's
So it kind
good.
of like depends on
Yeah.
what the change
Yeah,
is.
true.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have said like big changes like we
Yeah.
talked
No,
about.
but in terms of the changes
Yeah.
we spoke about today,
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
like one.
One, I agree. Because also I think if you do the 20 of these big changes a year, you won't produce anything, probably. It would kill the innovation of your company. All right. Maybe I also wanted to ask, we always want to make it very pragmatic for our listeners. So let's say tomorrow the CEO of my clients knocks on my door and says, Flo, we're going to be taking over by another company. Can you make a plan? I'm like, yeah, okay. How should I start? Where should I begin?
First of all, I would look at ADKAR. So
Okay.
that very basic one that I mentioned.
So it's
Yeah.
awareness,
Awareness,
desire,
knowledge,
knowledge,
ability, reinforcement.
Okay, so
Cool.
the K is the car with a K. ADKAR with a K.
ADKAR with a
knowledge.
K.
We will
yes.
put it in the speaker notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would really recommend it.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to just start there. I would say make space for goodbyes, which often gets forgotten, whether it's saying goodbye to people or history or a brand if you're being taken over. Really make the space for the goodbyes. If you show respect for what's gone before, respect for the history, people, I believe, are more willing to hope that and believe that you will have respect for the future and they will be treated respectfully. So I really think that gets missed a lot in that situation.
Yeah.
So really, if you're getting taken over tomorrow, the first thing you need to do is get everybody together and explain why this is happening and then put your plan in place for the next few months.
And do it weekly, daily stand-up with the team.
Again, depending on the level of likely impact. So better though, always better to do too much communication than not enough.
For me, the key takeaways were make sure that everybody is kind of on the same page on the change curve. And if they're not, make sure there is room for people, for example, to be angry or to be in denial or whatsoever. Communicate the why very, very clear. Over-communicate maybe, even if you don't have any updates. Make sure that you make room for people to ask questions. And I think those are my most important key takeaways.
And I really especially liked the, you already mentioned them, but I especially like these models like change curve, ADKAR. And I think if we're really understanding it is going to get harder before it gets better, then when the turbulence comes, then we're ready for it and we can get through it.
And treat people like humans / adults. So be empathic. And I think then you will be okay. Thank you, Toni, for joining this month's 7 People podcast. It really helped us on how to stay irresistible even through big changes. Thank you, Personio, for sponsoring this podcast. And listeners, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please give us 5 stars on Spotify. See you next time. Bye. And for this, we invited Toni Cairns. No.
Toni Cairns, change manager.
I was like so nervous for this name.
Toni Cairns. Toni Cairns.
Cairns. And for this, we invited Toni Cairns. Okay, now I cannot say it normally. Cairns. I will just call you Toni, okay?